Okay, we are now looking at the multiplication of numbers. Let's look at this first example. Let's say you have a negative bracket negative 9. Now, what this in fact means is you are saying negative times a negative. That's what you say. You can also write it as negative 1. If you don't see a number in front of a bracket, think of it as a 1. So, and then think about this bracket as a multiplication. So then we can write this as negative 1 times negative 9. Okay? And I think that's clearer because now you know it's negative 1 times negative 9. And then we know, okay, a negative times a negative, and that is a positive. Okay, but let's just recap this multiplication of signs. If you have a positive number times another positive number, you will get a positive. Okay, if you have a negative times a negative, then you'll get a positive. Do you see here that if you multiply the same signs with each other, you get a positive? Okay, negative times a negative is also positive. If the signs differ, so it's a positive number times a negative number, that is a negative, or a negative times a positive, that's a negative. This you will have to remember. This will become second nature as you go along, but please, you'll need to memorize this. Okay, so just going back to the sum, a negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 9 is 9. Okay, so that's one example. Let's look at the second example. And the second example is, let's say you have negative 6 brackets times negative 3. This is basically the same as if you would say negative 6 times negative 3. It means exactly the same. So yeah, a negative times a negative again, that's a positive. 6 times 3, and that is 18. Okay, so there you have positive 18. Let's look at another example. Let's say you have 5 bracket and negative 11. Again, if you have two numbers next to each other and there are brackets, just think about the bracket as a multiplication. So you have 5 times negative 11. Okay, now if you don't see a sign, the sign is always positive, so it's positive times a negative, and that we know is a negative. And 5 times 11 is 55. Okay, let's look at the fourth example. The fourth example, and that would be negative 4 times negative 3 times negative 2, and then you'll have, okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, again, the brackets means multiplication if you have it next to each other, so you can and there's already a multiplication, so you can write it as negative 4 times negative 3 times negative 2, whichever way you want. Okay, whichever way you want. Okay, let's see what the answer is. Okay, so it's a negative times a negative. We know it's a positive, and then it's 4 times 3, and that is 12, and then you have that times by negative 2. So just move this a bit down. Okay, just move it a bit down. So then you will have that's positive 12 times a negative 2. So positive times a negative, the signs differ, so you will get a negative. So negative, and then you have 12 times 2, and that is 24. And that's your answer, and that's how you do multiplication of integers.